Okay, in this part I'm gonna show how to do firing animations, or what they're called in New Vegas, they're called attack animations. These. Okay, so before that you need to learn, or you need to know what you're gonna be naming the file and what files you need to make in Blender. To do that you could just do TDT to bring up the animation debugger. This is an option in Stewie's Tweaks in case you don't know yet. Okay, so we have our idle here. We did that in part 1. And if you don't know how to do an idle, you could just watch part 1 and I cover that. Alright, so there's 3 files you need to know so you can make them in Blender. So there's attack loop, 2HA attack loop, which is the shooting animation. The aim down sights, which is AimIS. This one's pretty easy to do. And then the aim down sights shooting, which is attack loop IS. IS means iron sights, so attack loop, aim down sight, and aim down sight shooting. I decided to do part 2, the firing animation tutorial, because you need to learn how to use a tool in Blender called the curve editor, or the graph editor. That'll help you a lot if you know how to use that when you make a reload. And in case you haven't noticed yet, when I do a shooting, it's not synced up with the position of the shooting animation because they don't start from the same idle. That's why we're gonna do shooting animation, the attack animation, so everything could start from this position. Alright, to make the 2HA AimIS, which is the aim down sights animation, you could literally just take the file that you made, the idle file from part 1, and convert it to 2HA AimIS. To do that you need to use sniff, so launch up sniff, go to the update priority section, update priority of control blocks, your input directory, make it to wherever you have this file at, BIP01 rotate, BIP01 translate and non-accum on this line, exact match, 25 on this box, 54 on this box, and then your output directory wherever you want it to process. So mine was on the desktop. So open it, go here, click on this, click on the text right here, and name it AimIS. Save it. And then you have to rename this. You have to rename it to 2HA AimIS. Just drag this in here, and now you have your aim down sights animation. Just double check to make sure you named the AimIS right here, and this one should still be just aim. So now you have your idle and your aim down sights animation. But if you're gonna do this method, make sure for your idle that there is no rotations on X, Y, and Z for both the motion and the idle bone. Because if you leave them with some rotation, like let's say you have your regular idle like this, and then you're gonna convert that file to the iron sight animation, then you're gonna be aiming sideways, like rotated sideways, and you don't want that. Just make sure that for these bones, they're both zeroed right here in these 3 sections. And if you want to use like a tilted idle like this or whatever, and you have it like that, and you want to use the same idle for your aim down sights, then you're gonna have to zero these out, and then just save this as your idle, bake it, export it, and then do that method that I showed you. Alright, so now it's time you need to make your shooting animation from hipfire shooting. That one you can't just convert files or anything. You need to make it from Blender. Okay, so you have your idle file, load it up. What I like to do is I like to look at it from this view, the side view, and then I like to just hide these bones just to get a clear view of this. Alright, and now what you're gonna be doing is you're gonna be only using the motion bone to make your shooting animation. What I like to do is I like to make my shooting animation 25 frames and 60 FPS, which is almost like half a second. Okay, so on frame 2, what I like to do is, this is the frame where the gun reaches its peak, like peak kick. So what I like to do is just moving it a little back, a little tilt, and then somewhere around this frame I like to have it like that. And if you play the animation, you got an attack animation, an attack loop animation. Attack loop is for automatic guns, which is this ACR for New Vegas. For semi-automatic guns, the file will be called something else. It'll be called like attack 9 or attack right, attack 8, 7. But for automatic guns, it's attack loop. You don't need to make it 25 frames. That's just how I do it. Sometimes for attack loop, it really just depends on you. And what I like to do is I like to make the attack animations depending like on what type of gun it is, like if the gun has a stock or if it's a heavy or a light gun. But for now, this should be fine, just to show you how to do it. Okay, so this looks okay for now, but to make it look even better, what you're going to be doing is using the graph editor. To launch up the graph editor, you need to click on this little box and select the graph editor. And now what I like to do is I like to hide all the scale. I like to hide all the scale curves and the W rotation curve, because all you want is the XYZ location and rotations. Alright, if I were you, I'd look up graph editor tutorials on YouTube. There's a really good one by Polybagel, and then you could also look at the official Blender tutorial about the graph editor, because they explain it a lot better than I do. I just started using it too, so you'll learn a lot more from their videos and like the techniques that Polybagel uses to make shooting and reload animations with the graph editor. So if this is normalized, make sure it's not normalized, and then you should just have these little curves right here. If you click on the channels over here, each one is responsible for a different type of transform. So X location, let's go to frame 2, which is the furthest away that the gun kicks back. X location is responsible for how back and forward the gun will move. Y is for side to side, and Z is for up and down. You could just go to each channel and see which one they are responsible for, what movement they're responsible for. So X rotation, you can see it kind of does like this little side to side rotation. If you go to Y, it goes up and down rotation. And if you do Z rotation, it's this like left and right rotation. So what we're going to be doing is using the graph editor to edit the movements, to smooth out the movements from the kick of the gun to back to idle. So there's two ways of editing keys in the graph editor. So let's say we go to frame 2 and we go to X location. You could press G to move these around, move the keys around themselves, the dots. Or you could rotate these curves around the dots like this with R. You won't really notice the difference yet, but if you play the animation, you click the key and you mess around with it meanwhile the animation is playing. Like if I press R, you can see in real time how it edits the movements. So let's say I do this really deep curve, this up high curve, down's kind of messed up. These are the handles, these around the keys, and you could press G on one side of the handle to increase or decrease the influence on the curve. So let's say if I do this little short influence on the curve, you could see how the curve isn't really going down that much, but if I stretch it out more, it'll make the curve deeper. Alright, time to make the attack animation. What I like to do is, I like to mess with the Y rotation and the X location the most for attacks. So just keep clicking the dots until you get to the channel that you want to edit. Since they overlap, you need to keep clicking until you get the channel. So now I'm on Y rotation. This is frame 2. So if I press G, I could edit how much it's going to rotate. So what I like to do is just keep messing around while the animation is playing and see what works best for me. Alright, so what I ended up doing was I just lowered the X location a little bit more down. I made the X rotation a little bit higher, and this one I lowered it a little bit more on frame 2. So now we're going to go to frame 10, and now I'm going to edit these values over here. Okay, so all I really ended up doing was just moving the keyframe from 7 to 15, and then I just moved the X location to 13. I think it looks kind of fine right now. So if you want to see how it's going to look, because if you just play this, it's going to look how if you shoot one shot. But if you want to see how it's going to look when you're shooting fully automatically, you could end the animation a little bit more earlier, so you can see how it's going to look. Like depending on the gun's rate of fire, you could make it end faster or slower. It's gonna depend on the rate of fire of the gun. Alright, so if you're gonna be doing a reciprocating handle, like if you don't know what I mean, if you're gonna have the handle be moving back and forth with the shooting animation, what you're gonna have to do is bring up the gun skeleton. What you're gonna do is parent this mesh of the handle to the bone that's responsible for the handle. To check what it is, you could look at it in Nifskope, but usually you could just tell by clicking the bones like this. Charging handle, this is gonna be in control of this mesh, this model in game. but in Blender you need to make the model part of this bone. To do that, go to object mode, press on this handle, Alt P. Okay, so you got this handle. What you're gonna do now, Shift left click the skeleton of the gun, Control Tab to go to pose mode, keep holding Shift until you find the bone of the charging handle or whatever it's called. And then if you found it, what you're gonna do is Control P, bone. And now if you move this around, it's gonna move this around, the model. Okay, so now that you've done that, what you're gonna do now is go to frame 0, make sure you're in frame 0, click on any bone of the gun skeleton, press A, so they're all highlighted, and on frame 0 you're gonna press I, location rotation. You're gonna key all the nodes, all the gun skeleton bones, which are called nodes. You're gonna key all of them on frame 0. Okay, so what I like to do is on frame 2, bring this just a little bit back. Oh shoot, that's the trigger bone. The charging handle until it's all the way back, or however far the handle will go back when shooting. And then I like to take the summary key of the frame 0, copy it to frame 4. And now if you play the animation, the handle should go back every time you shoot. Okay, so on the dope sheet where everything is, where you can see everything, make sure the frame 4 for me, this, copy it to frame 20. So if you like shorten the animation, you're gonna see it's gonna be shooting like that in game. Alright, so now it's time to animate the finger trigger pull and the camera if you want. So what I do here is I take the summary key in the dope sheet and I drag it to the last frame just to make sure everything is fine. Okay, so to do the trigger pull, what I do is I go to the frame 0, go to the rig, go to the fingertip of this finger, and on frame 0 I already have it pulling the trigger. You could animate the trigger itself too if you want with the trigger bone, but I don't really bother with that. So what I do here is I run this for about 1/3 of the way of the animation, so it looks like it goes back to resting position once the gun has already shot. And if you play it like in the rate of fire of the gun, it's still gonna show the finger pulling the trigger. Alright, so now to animate the camera, what you're gonna want to do is go to these bones over here, the one that says camera dummy, and then what I like to do is I like to scroll down here just so I could see the influence camera, the keyframes, and I delete the keyframes in between the first and the last frame. Alright, so what I do is on frame 2, make sure it's clicked, the camera dummy, go to the little blue bone over here, and then what I do here is I set an influence for, because the camera is constrained to the motion bones, so if we put an influence, like a little slight influence. Make sure whenever you put one, you press set inverse. You'll see, like on the left side, you'll see how now the camera is moving too with the gun, and it looks pretty alright. And if you do this, that's how it's pretty much gonna look like in game. Alright, so once you're happy with your shooting animation, now it's time to bake and export the animation. So just like from part 1, go to here, scene root, where it says scene root, control left click right here. Click on this, go to pose mode, go to pose, animation, bake action, all these, and make sure this ends at the frame that your animation ends. Okay, so now your animation is baked. The priorities for attacks, they are 50, 55. And these three, remember these three are always going to be 25. Non-accum, translate, and rotate. And then for attack loop, it's called this, attack loop. Not all shooting animations are going to be called attack loop. This is only for the fully automatic guns. For example, the semi-automatic, I think those are attack 3. And then pistol ones, those are attack right. Just to know what you're going to be naming it, you could look inside the KFs, the vanilla files, into their KFs, and then see what they're called in them. Okay, so this is now the important part. Now we're going to get into the text keys. Each animation, they have their own set of text keys, so we can't use the same ones from idle, like start, PRN, and N. Those are not going to work for attack loop or the fully automatic shooting animation. They have their own. So the first one, it'll be start, and then on the next frame, no blend. Make sure it's this is capital, because I think in Nifskope it's pretty case sensitive, so you need to make sure it's like that. Number 2, another one. And for attack loops, you're gonna have to put interrupt loop. This is gonna make it so the animation matches up with the rate of fire of the gun. For semi-automatic attacks or for bolt action shooting animations, they're not gonna be the same way. Their text keys are like start, no blend, and then it'll have a text key called hit, which I think that one's, from what I heard, it's for muzzle flashes. That's when the muzzle flash appears, but I haven't done a semi-automatic attack in a while, so I can't remember. And then depending on what number or letter the attack is, so let's say for attack 3, which I think is the semi-automatic attack, so let's say like on frame 7 or 8, you do another text key, and this one you'll call it A, for which means attack, and then :3, that just means attack 3. And on this frame you're telling the game, okay, so on this frame you're going to be able to shoot again. But for attack loop, that's not the case. All you need to do is put interrupt loop. This third one that we put, interrupt loop. So 0 start, 1 no blend, 2 interrupt loop, and then on the last frame it'll be just end. So once you make sure that you have this the right name, attack loop, or depending on your shooting animation, attack right or attack 3 or whatever, make sure this is right. Make sure the priorities are right, 55. and then these are 25. You got your text keys right. Now it's time to export. You could export it. Now what you're going to be calling it is the file that was showing in game when you did the console. So for this one it's called 2HA attack loop. So once you export it, you'll be good. Okay, but you're still not done if you did a reciprocating handle or a reciprocating whatever for your shooting animation. Like for this one we did, if we go back to the save before baking, since this one has a reciprocating handle, you're gonna have to export these nodes. The bones from the gun skeleton, you need to export them. So all you need to do is on the collection where the nodes are at, you're gonna control left click on this collection wherever the nodes are at. If you play the animation, you'll see the bone moving for charging handle. Make sure these are all selected. Go to pose, bake action, and then export it. Name them nodes. Okay, so now go to wherever you exported the files. So now all you have to do is just copy paste, put the file into your KMVSC folder so you could get it in game. And this next part you only have to do if you did a reciprocating handle, if you did the nodes KF2. So open this up, and then you're gonna also have to open this up. You can hide these. Okay, so now what you need to do is click on this night controller sequence, go right here to num control blocks, double click it so you could change the number, and since we only animated one node, which was the handle, this will only go up by 1. Now go here to control blocks, right click, array, update. Okay, so now you should see there's an empty control block right here. Okay, so now go to the nodes KF, click on this, drop down the control blocks. You need to find the node that was in charge of the handle. So in my case, it was this one. Drop down, click on this blue arrow. It'll take you to whatever night transform interpolator that it has. Right click, block, copy branch. Go back to this one. Right click here, block, paste branch. Scroll back up, click on this again, scroll down again. Now right here where you did note, where it says node name, you're going to want to name it the same as this charging handle. What I like to do is just copy and paste it. So click on these little letters, text, and just paste it. Right here where it says controller, click on the little text, and then you need to find one that says this night transform controller. Just save it and you'll be done. Okay, so now we're in game, and as you can see, this is our idle, and now I'm gonna do aim down sights. Actually, let me turn on the debugger. Our 2HA AimIS that we did earlier, that one's playing for the aim down sights, and the attack loop is playing. So something that I noticed was that the charging handle, it was actually located, it wasn't even located in the hashtag charging handle node, so I had to put it under there. If you want to know what model or what mesh is under what node, what you could do is for the gun that you want to animate, the Nif, just open it up in Nifskope, and then let's see, if we press on that mesh, I put it under charging handle. It wasn't before, but I had to put it in there. So let's say next time we do a reload, the mesh of the magazine, it's located under hashtag clip. So we're gonna have to name this in our KF next time we do a reload. Okay, so now we need to go and do the attack loop IS, the aim down sight shooting. If you want, you could also convert that into the IS through the sniff method that I showed, but I wouldn't really recommend it, especially if you have uh, camera movement like I did with the attack loop, because if you have camera movement in your aim down sights, then your bullets aren't going to go where you're aiming at it. Alright, so now we're back at the idle blend. So what you're going to do now is, you see this keyframe at -10, you're going to copy it to frame 0 with Shift D, and what you're going to see is that it centered the gun, and this way in game, whatever you're going to be aiming down, the bullets are going to go to that enemy, so there won't be any misalignment or anything. Okay, so the way to do attack loop IS, or just any attack IS, is the exact same way as doing the hip fire one. So do your start and your end key, and then you're going to be using the motion bone to do your weapon kick. Okay, and then once you're happy with that, and then if you want, you could do the curve editor like the exact same way we did it with the regular hip fire attack. For now, I'm gonna just leave it as it is, just to show you how to do the IS. For this left side, since there's not really a preset like the camera position, you're gonna have to do it manually. You have to move around the camera until you get a position. If anyone knows a better method to do this, just let me know, because that's the only way, as far as I know, to get the camera to look like how it's gonna look like in game. Okay. You could animate the trigger finger too, and the charging handle too, but for now this is just fine. So once you're happy with your animation, this should be a good time to save right now. Okay, so once you're done saving, now it's time to bake and export the animation. Okay, so you already know the drill. Left click, control the scene root, switch it to pose mode, animation, bake action. Okay, make sure there's the action editor, and this, you're gonna name it the same as the other attack, if it's attack 3 or attack right or whatever. In this case it's attack loop, and you're gonna end it with IS. So it's going to be attack loop IS, or attack 3 IS, or attack 8 IS, or whatever. For these bones, they're 55 too. For these 3, just remember it's always 25. And for the text keys, these are really easy. It's just the start, no blend, and then end. Okay, and now you should be able to export, and you should be good for this. Okay, but you're not done yet. So what you're gonna want to do is also download this mod, IScontrol. If you don't know what this does, this is just a quick visual to help you understand what it does. So just in case you didn't know, that for ADS sights, for when you're shooting aim down sights, instead of the gun doing like this kick animation, it's just gonna bounce up and down like that, and then once you add an IScontrol animation to your IS attack animation, it's going to look better. Basically, it's not going to look like that goofy bounce. It's going to look like a proper shooting animation. So once you have this downloaded into your game, go back to your blend. So go back here. Once you already finished exporting the scene root of the other one, now it's time to do this. You're going to control left click, collection 10. You're going to see these bones move. If you switch it to pose mode, you're going to see IScontrol is already right there. Wait, no, that's charging handle. You're going to notice that everything else is moving except for IScontrol. Okay, so what you're going to do, highlight all of these, pose, animation, bake action. And then just export this and you should be good. You could call it IScontrol, because what we're gonna do is also transfer this node over like we did with the charging handle node. Okay, so now that we're here, wherever we exported the attack loop IS, open this up and open this one up. Okay. Oh shoot. So what you're gonna do now is do the exact same thing with the other one. Okay, so right here, if you only did the IScontrol like I did, you're just gonna do 63. But if you did the IScontrol and you also animated the reciprocating handle, then it's gonna be 64. But for me, all I did was the IScontrol, so you're gonna do array update after you did 63. Scroll down. Okay, the same thing that we did the other time, we're gonna do here. The blue arrow, block, copy branch, go back here, paste branch, scroll back up, scroll back down here, and then this, you're gonna name, the node name is going to be capital IS control with capital C. Controller, transform controller. And then save it. Okay, so we just did all 3 of those animations. We did aim down sights. Actually, let me bring this up. Aim down sights, attack loop, and the last one we did was attack loop IS. looks kind of butt because I didn't really refine it with the curve editor, but you get the idea. If you want to make it look better, you gotta use the curve editor to make sure it looks better than this. Anyways, that's for part 2, the attack animations. Next part, I'm gonna do part 3, reloads, because now you know how to use the curve editor, or now you have an idea how to use it. Alright.